The air felt thick and unmoving that day, heavy with the smell of fresh-cut grass mixed with hot asphalt baking in the sun. It was the kind of summer silence that presses in on you so hard you can hear your own heartbeat, slow and loud in your ears. On a street where every house looked just like the next, under a sky washed pale by the heat, my life was coming apart one piece at a time. My name is Leo. I was standing on the sidewalk, feeling like a ghost watching his own ending, as strangers walked in and out of the only home I'd ever known, carrying my memories out the front door. There was my wife's old floral armchair, the fabric worn thin exactly where she used to sit. She's been gone 3 years now. There was a wooden crate filled with vinyl records, the crackle and pop of them once being the soundtrack of my younger days. A floor lamp followed, its brass base dented from the time my son, now grown, with a family of his own in another state, tried to ride his tricycle through the living room. None of it mattered to the men carrying it out. To them, it was just furniture, just stuff to be loaded onto a truck. I had my hands shoved deep into the pockets of my old army jacket, faded olive drab, and far too warm for a day like that. My knuckles were white, gripping nothing, like I could hold on to the past if I squeezed hard enough. I was 82 years old. I'd survived a war in a jungle half a world away. I'd buried my wife. I'd raised a child. I'd worked 50 years at the local mill without complaint. I made it through all of that, only to be beaten by a stack of papers filled with words I never really understood. Overseeing it all was a man in a neat, pale blue suit. Mr. Gentry. He stood there with his arms crossed, calm and detached, like this was just another task on his schedule. He wore a smile that never touched his eyes, the kind a predator wears. He'd called himself my friend once, said he was there to help. He talked about reverse mortgages and freeing up assets, about security and peace of mind. What he gave me instead was this public stripping of my life. The neighbors watched from behind their curtains and screen doors. I could feel their pity, their shame, but it didn't last long. Fear swallowed it up. They were afraid of Mr. Gentry and the legal power he carried like a weapon, afraid of drawing his attention, afraid of being next. That's when I felt it before I heard it, a low rumble under my feet, like distant thunder. It rolled closer, stronger, until the ground itself seemed to shake. The quiet hum of the neighborhood disappeared, drowned out by a roar that climbed the street. Over the hill came a wave of chrome and black leather. The Iron Serpents Motorcycle Club. They rode tight and disciplined, steel and muscle moving as one. Their vests were covered in patches that spoke of long roads and hard lives. Their faces were rough, carved by sun and wind, marked by the kind of toughness you don't fake and don't survive without scars. At the front was Stryker. He wasn't a young man. His beard was more gray than dark, and deep lines framed his eyes. Still, he sat on his bike perfectly steady, like a commander who knew exactly where he belonged. He wasn't wearing a helmet. His eyes swept over everything. The moving truck, the men hauling out my furniture, the smug man in the suit. And then they landed on me, standing alone at the curb. His eyes narrowed. He lifted one gloved hand. All at once, 20 engines went silent. The sudden quiet was worse than the noise. Boots hit the pavement as the riders dismounted, the scrape and click echoing down the street. Everything stopped. The movers froze mid-step. For the first time, Mr. Gentry's smile slipped. Fear had a new face on that street, and it wasn't wearing a suit. I watched the bikers closely. I'd seen the looks in my neighbors' eyes. I'd heard the whispers around town, dangerous men, outlaws, monsters. But standing there, looking at them lined up like a silent army, I didn't see monsters. I saw strength. I saw power. And I knew I had nothing left to lose. I pulled my hands out of my pockets and straightened my back. Somewhere deep inside, old training kicked in, military discipline pushing through the fog of despair. I took one slow step off the curb, then another. I walked toward them, toward the biggest, most intimidating man I'd ever seen. The street felt empty, like all the air had been sucked out of it. Every eye followed me as I moved, slow and deliberate, toward Stryker, the president of the Iron Serpents. You could almost hear the unspoken gasp hanging there, waiting for something to explode. Stryker watched me come. He saw my hands shaking, but he also saw what was left of the steel inside me. He saw a soldier, a survivor, a man pushed clear to the edge. When I got close, he swung his leg off the bike and stepped forward. Up close, he looked like a mountain. Leather, tattoos, raw presence. Everything I wasn't anymore. The rest of the bikers spread out behind him, forming a silent wall. I stopped and tilted my head back to meet his eyes. My voice came out dry and rough, but it carried in the silence. You look like you've seen a thing or two. He didn't smile. He just nodded. A few. The next words nearly broke me. I need help, I said. That man, he stole my house. The plea hung there, simple and bare. Trusting men, everyone feared to save me from the man who wore the law. Stryker didn't look away. Then, to everyone's shock, he dropped to one knee in front of me. Brought himself down to my level, eye to eye. It wasn't weakness. It was respect. Tell me everything, he said. His voice was low and gravelly, but there was no threat in it. Just steadiness. The sound of a promise. Behind us, Mr. Gentry's smooth voice cut in. I'm sorry to interrupt this little gathering, he said, stepping forward, confidence creeping back as he raised his clipboard like armor. But this is a private property matter, sanctioned by the court. This man defaulted on his loan. Stryker didn't even turn around. Is that right? He asked me. I shook my head, a tear finally breaking loose and carving a line through the dust on my cheek. He said it was help, I told him. A government program for veterans. Said I wouldn't have to worry about money again. And I'm sure I have the paperwork, Gentry added smoothly. It's unfortunate, but perfectly legal. Now I'll need you and your associates to move along. You're interfering with a lawful eviction. Stryker slowly stood to his full height, and the street knew something had just changed. Stryker turned slowly, like he had all the time in the world, and faced Mr. Gentry. Just the size of him, the way he carried that coiled, ready strength, made the man in the blue suit stumble backward without meaning to. You got a name? Stryker asked. Gentry, the man said quickly. Alan Gentry. He tried to sound important, tried to sound in control, but it wasn't working anymore. And you, Stryker said, his voice flat and cold, are the man who just made this my business. He tipped his chin toward me. This man's wearing a jacket from the 1st Cavalry. He fought at Ia Drang. You know what that means, Mr. Gentry? Gentry didn't answer. He just stared, swallowing hard. It means he walked through hell, Stryker went on, his voice dropping lower, each word landing heavy. So men like you could live soft and comfortable. And you pay him back by stealing his home? Stryker leaned in slightly. Bad choice. Real bad choice. Gentry let out a nervous little laugh that sounded more like a squeak. This is ridiculous. I have documents. I have a court order. The law is on my side. If you don't disperse right now, I'll call the police and have every one of you arrested for harassment and intimidation. A low chuckle rolled through the bikers behind him. It wasn't friendly. It was the kind of sound predators make when prey says something foolish. Stryker stepped closer, close enough that Gentry could smell leather and oil. Gentry wanted to move back. I could see it in his eyes, but his feet wouldn't obey him. Terror had him pinned right where he stood. From where I was sitting, I could see the small scars on Stryker's knuckles, the detailed serpent tattoo climbing his neck. You go right ahead and call them, Stryker said quietly. But first, we're going to look at those papers. And my men are going to put every single thing this soldier owns back inside his house. Every last item. Carefully. He turned his head just a little. Bear, you heard me. A massive man stepped out from the group. He was even bigger than Stryker, built like something nature hadn't meant to be challenged. His name was Bear, and it fit him perfectly. He walked over to the two movers who were still frozen in place, holding a box filled with delicate china. Put it down, Bear said softly. The movers looked at Gentry, then at Bear, then back at Gentry. They were paid by the hour, and this situation wasn't covered in their handbook. Slowly, they lowered the box onto the grass and stepped back, hands raised. Now pick it up, Bear said again, his voice deeper this time, and carry it back inside. Gentry's face went red and blotchy. You can't do this. This is my property. I'll sue you. I'll sue all of you. Stryker didn't even look at him. Instead, he glanced at another biker, a lean guy with sharp eyes and a laptop bag over his shoulder instead of a weapon. Ghost, Stryker said. Do what you do. Ghost nodded once, pulled a thin laptop from his bag, flipped it open, and sat down on the curb like he was settling in for coffee. His fingers started moving fast, smooth and precise, tapping out something I didn't understand. Stryker turned back to Gentry and held out his hand. You mentioned paperwork, he said calmly. Let's see it. Gentry hugged the clipboard to his chest like it was a life preserver. I'm not obligated to show you anything. I think you are, Stryker replied, his voice dropping to almost nothing. Because right now, this whole street is our office. And we're conducting an audit. Nobody moved. Gentry stood there trapped. Behind him, a wall of silent bikers. In front of him, the slow realization that his perfectly legal, perfectly cruel little world was being torn apart by men who followed a different code. Not contracts. Not loopholes. Honor. Loyalty. The law of the pack. While Stryker held Gentry in place with nothing more than his stare, the rest of the club went to work. Bear directed the movers, his sheer presence making sure every piece of furniture went back inside like it was fragile artwork. Another biker, Doc, came over to me. He had steady hands and eyes that had seen too much. A former combat medic, I later learned. Sit down, soldier, he said gently, guiding me onto my porch swing, freshly returned where it belonged. Take a slow breath. He handed me a bottle of water. Heat like this can get dangerous. Let's keep you hydrated. He checked my pulse, professional and calm, but his touch was kind. Then a woman sat beside me. Long dark braid. Leather vest with a serpent patch, just like the others. Her name was Raven, the only woman in the Iron Serpents, and tough as any man there. She laid a blanket from my own living room over my shoulders. He said it was called Patriot Home Solutions. I whispered, my voice cracking. Sounded so trustworthy. Raven squeezed my hand. The worst snakes hide in the greenest grass, she said. Don't you worry, Leo. Stryker knows how to deal with snakes. Out on the curb, Ghost kept working. His screen filled with lines of code and windows opening and closing faster than I could follow. He wasn't just a biker. Turns out he used to work signals intelligence for a military unit, so secret most folks never hear about it. To him, men like Gentry were transparent. He pulled up the Patriot Home Solutions website first. Flags. Eagles. Smiling stock photos of happy seniors. Then he dug deeper, peeling back layers of shell companies and fake LLCs, following the money trail. It didn't take him long. Gentry, still locked in Stryker's orbit, started sweating through his expensive shirt. He kept glancing at his phone, then down the empty street, hoping for sirens. This is illegal, he hissed. You're holding me here against my will. Are we? Stryker asked mildly. You're free to leave any time. He gestured toward the ring of bikers. Of course, you might find the path a little crowded. Ghost finally looked up. Stryker. Stryker turned his head. Talk to me. Classic foreclosure rescue scam. Ghost said, loud enough for everyone to hear, including the neighbors watching now from open doorways. Targets seniors with high home equity. Promises veterans a special reverse mortgage. Contracts are intentionally confusing. Balloon payments trigger instant default. Leo probably signed over power of attorney. He paused, then finished it. He's done this 17 times in the last 2 years across 3 states. There's an active warrant in Arizona for felony elder fraud matching his description. Whatever mask Gentry had left didn't just slip. It shattered. The confidence vanished, replaced by raw, naked panic. His face went pale. His eyes darted like a trapped animal. That expensive suit suddenly looked like nothing more than a cheap costume worn by a coward. That's a lie. Gentry screamed, his voice breaking apart. Slander. You don't have any proof. Oh, I do, Ghost said calmly. He turned his laptop so Gentry could see it. On the screen was a crystal-clear image of Gentry's driver's license from the Arizona DMV, placed right beside a wanted poster from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Same face. Same eyes. Facial recognition is a beautiful thing, Ghost went on evenly. They've been searching for a man named Mark Vance for 6 months. Looks like you picked up a new name and found yourself a new hunting ground. Gentry stared at the screen. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Everything drained out of him at once. The swagger, the arrogance, the fake outrage. It all collapsed, leaving behind a hollow man who knew the game was over. This was the moment the mask came off. The wolf, stripped of his sheep's clothing, stood exposed for what he really was, a small, desperate scavenger who fed on the old and the honorable. You think you're tough? Gentry muttered weakly, grasping for one last scrap of pride. Hiding behind leather and engines. You're just thugs. Stryker leaned in close. His voice dropped to a quiet, deadly whisper. Maybe, he said. But we don't steal from men who bled for our freedom. That's the difference. It's called a code. You should look it up. Then Gentry snapped. He shoved past Stryker, panic driving him now. I'm calling the police, he yelled, fumbling for his phone. Good, Stryker said to his back. They're already on their way. Gentry froze. His finger hovered over the screen. Slowly, he turned around, a new kind of fear settling into his face. What? Stryker pulled out his own phone, an old flip phone, scuffed and solid, just like him. I made a call while you were busy posturing, he said. Not to the local cops. Too many complications. I called an old friend. Served with him years back. He's a U.S. Marshal now. Specializes in multi-state financial crimes. Stryker paused. Funny thing is, his office has been hunting your Mr. Vance for months. He was real happy to hear from me. Right on cue, 2 dark sedans with government plates rolled onto the street from the far end. No sirens. No lights. They didn't need them. Authority followed them like a shadow. They stopped cleanly, boxing in Gentry's luxury car. 4 men stepped out, dressed sharp, moving with the smooth efficiency of federal agents. One of them, a square-jawed man with focused eyes, walked straight toward Stryker. He didn't even glance at Gentry. Stryker, the marshal said, extending his hand. Been a long time. Frank, Stryker replied, shaking it. Appreciate you coming so fast. Our pleasure, Frank said. His eyes finally shifted to Gentry. We've been wanting a word with this gentleman for quite a while. He smiled thinly. Mr. Gentry, or is it Vance today? Or maybe Croft, like you used in Nevada? Gentry didn't move. He looked like the ground had vanished under his feet. The bikers were talking to the law. The law was shaking hands with the bikers. Everything he believed about power and control shattered in real time. 2 agents stepped in beside him. Alan Gentry, also known as Mark Vance. One of them recited flatly. You are under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, and felony financial exploitation of an elder. You have the right to remain silent. As the cuffs snapped shut, Gentry completely lost what little composure he had left. He twisted and struggled, desperation taking over. This is a mistake, he shouted. They attacked me. They're a criminal gang. Marshal Frank looked at the Iron Serpents, then back at Gentry. From where I'm standing, he said calmly. It looks like these citizens were helping a decorated veteran move his furniture back into his home. The home you were trying to steal. The bikers didn't say a word. They stood still, forming a quiet semicircle. No cheering. No victory laps. Justice didn't need noise. Gentry was led away, a broken, sweating man in an expensive suit, his career of predation finished. Slowly, the neighbors came out of their houses. They looked at me, sitting safe on my porch. They looked at the federal agents. Then they looked at the Iron Serpents, not with fear anymore, but with something new. Respect. Justice hadn't waited for a courtroom months away. It had shown up right there on the hot asphalt, delivered by men the world liked to call monsters. When Gentry was gone, the tension finally broke. The street went quiet again, but this time it felt different, lighter. The marshals took my statement and gathered the fake paperwork Gentry had left behind. Frank gave Stryker a final nod before climbing into his car and driving off. The legal machine was rolling now, but the Iron Serpents weren't finished. Stryker turned to his men. All right, let's put this house back together. What happened next felt like a small miracle. These men, built for long rides and hard roads, turned into the most careful moving crew I'd ever seen. Bear carried my box of china like it was made of glass, his massive hands steady and gentle. Wrench and Diesel went straight to the front door, which had been damaged earlier. They pulled out tools and started fixing the lock, reinforcing the frame like it was second nature. The neighbors watched for a moment. Then an elderly woman from across the street, Mrs. Gable, came over with a pitcher of iced tea and plastic cups. You boys look like you could use this, she said softly. Bear took a cup. Thank you, ma'am, he said, his deep voice full of sincerity. That small moment changed everything. More neighbors came out. Sandwiches appeared. A retired carpenter offered to help with the door. Fear melted away, replaced by something stronger. The street came together to fix what had been broken, not just my house, but my dignity. Raven stayed beside me on the porch swing. Once the pressure lifted, the words started pouring out of me. I talked about my wife. Her garden. The day I bought this house 55 years ago with my Army savings. I wasn't just getting my home back. I was getting my story back. Stryker watched it all quietly. He saw his men work with care. He saw neighbors connect. This was their code. Not violence, not rebellion, but order in chaos. Protecting the flock when wolves came sniffing around. When everything was finally back in place and my house felt like a home again, Stryker walked up the steps and sat on the top one, looking out at the street. I watched the last neighbors head home. "I don't know how to thank you," I said finally. Stryker shook his head. "No thanks necessary. We look out for our own," Stryker said. "But I'm not one of you," I replied, nodding toward the leather vest on his chest. Stryker reached out and tapped the faded 1st Cavalry patch on my jacket. "This says you are," he said quietly. "You just wear a different uniform." For a moment, his eyes drifted somewhere far away. "A lot of us came home and didn't fit anymore," he went on. "The world we fought for didn't have room for us. We were too loud, too rough, too broken." He looked back at me, and there was something ancient in his gaze. Understanding earned the hard way. So we made our own place. We became the monsters people already thought we were, just so we'd have the strength to fight the real ones. The ones in suits. The ones with smiles and contracts. The ones who prey on good men like you. It wasn't bragging. It wasn't an excuse. It was both a confession and a mission statement. That was the story of the Iron Serpents, wounded men who turned into healers, outcasts who became guardians. Stryker straightened up. "We're going to make sure Gentry's whole operation is torn apart," he said. "Ghost is sending everything to the Marshal's office and the State Attorney General. They'll unwind the title transfer." He looked me square in the eye. "This house is yours, Leo. It always was." Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a neatly folded black t-shirt. He handed it to me. On the front, in simple white letters, were the words Iron Serpents. On the back was a single word. "Family. You're under our protection now," Stryker said. "If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call us. Your family." My hands shook as I unfolded the shirt. I stared at that word. Family. My wife was gone. My son lived far away. For a long time, I'd felt completely alone. But standing there, surrounded by these loud, rough, leather-clad angels, I felt like I had 100 brothers. I looked up at Stryker, tears running freely down my face now. Not tears of loss, but of something so big it hurt to hold. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you, son." Stryker just nodded once. Then he and his men mounted their bikes. When the engines roared to life this time, the sound wasn't threatening. It was triumphant, like cavalry riding away after a hard-won battle. As they pulled off, the people on the street didn't hide. They stood on their lawns and waved. 6 months passed. Leaves turned and fell. Winter covered the town in white. Then spring came, bringing a kind of renewal that felt deeper than the season itself. The story of me and the Iron Serpents became local legend. True to their word, the bikers spent weekends fixing up my house. A new roof, fresh paint, a garden restored by Raven and Mrs. Gable from across the street. My home looked alive again. But the biggest change was me. The frail, desperate man was gone. I gained weight. Color came back to my face. I walked with purpose again. 2 days a week, I spent time at the Iron Serpents Clubhouse. An old auto shop turned into something rough but full of heart. I wasn't a guest. I was part of the place. I helped clean. I brewed coffee they claimed was terrible, but drank anyway. I told my war stories to younger men who listened with a respect they usually saved for Stryker. I became their elder, their reminder of the code. That black t-shirt was my most prized possession. I wore it under my button-down shirts like armor. The town changed too. Fear faded. Respect took its place. When the bikers rode through town, people nodded. The diner waitress memorized their coffee orders and refused to charge for my meals. The sheriff tipped his hat to Stryker instead of looking for trouble. They were still outsiders. But they weren't outlaws anymore. They were guardians. Inside the clubhouse, framed on the wall, hung a copy of the local newspaper. The headline read, "Guardian Angels on Harleys. Local veterans saved from scammer by unlikely heroes." Next to it was a photo of Stryker on one knee, looking up at me. Strength bowing to honor. Gentry, Vance, whatever his real name was convicted. Ghost's evidence, along with other victims who finally found their courage, put him away for a long time. His operation was dismantled. His assets seized and returned where they belonged. Justice came on the street, and it held up in court. One sunny Saturday, the clubhouse was full of barbecue smoke and laughter. I sat at a picnic table arguing engines with wrench and diesel. Bear flipped burgers wearing a ridiculous kiss, the cook apron. Raven showed a neighbor's kid how to polish chrome the right way. It was family. Loud. Unusual. Unbreakable. Stryker stood off to the side watching. A small smile crossed his face. This was victory. Not fear, not noise, but peace. Then his phone buzzed. He answered the old flip phone, listened, and his expression hardened. "Where are you?" he asked. Pause. "Don't move. We're coming." He snapped the phone shut. "Saddle up." No one asked questions. Laughter stopped. Helmets came out. The iron serpents moved as one. I walked over as Stryker swung onto his bike. "Trouble?" I asked. "A woman," he said quietly. "Stranded at a rest stop 50 miles out. Her ex won't leave her alone. Says he's got friends in the local police. She's scared." I nodded. The world was still full of wolves. I put a hand on his shoulder. "Go give him hell, son." Stryker met my eyes and nodded back. "Always." With a thunder that no longer frightened this town, the iron serpents rode out, black and chrome against the setting sun. Their fight wasn't over. It never would be. For as long as there were wolves in the world, the serpents would.